Another C.D.C. production.
Ryan Monacan of Monacan Kennels, a fresh Canario breeder, Rain the Unxcripted podcast, doing the interview live on Canine Development and Culture. Sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
All right, cool. Well, I bet you never thought you'd see me doing a podcast again.
Been a little while, right? Been a little while. I seen you ruffle some feathers on some a few months ago, and
yeah. Apparently, I still am. I got people trolling channels. Like I can't even go do a podcast on another channel. People like, man, so and so just messaged me like. So yeah, I gotta like do stuff in secret now.
I know what you mean. I don't really get into the whole podcast thing too much, because you already know.
Right.
So I kind of lay in the background a little bit with stuff. Yeah.
Right. Well,
yeah. You end up stepping on some toes sometimes, and even if you're respectful with it. And just with conversation, you end up stepping on a lot of toes, and sometimes it gets taken wrong, and that's not always how you mean it.
Right, for sure. Well, brother, give us a quick introduction, who you are, what you got going on, the breed that that you're currently working with right now, and then we're going to jump right into it.
Okay. Well, a lot of people know me as Monacan Ryan. I have Monacan Kennel. I've been in the press of Canarios for over 20 years now. I've been raised with dogs. When I was born, we actually had a CNI dog. My aunt had passed away. She had a black lab CNI dog. So from birth, I was around dogs with a purpose.
Right, got you.
Yeah, dogs with a purpose. And it doesn't mean it necessarily had to, just a job. It didn't have to be a protector or go hog hunt, just a dog with a job. That's a working dog. It doesn't mean that necessarily it has to do protection or there's different types of work, right? And so I was just raised around dogs like that, and try to make it short as possible. I grew up in Richmond, and I was born in '81. Richmond it still is, but Richmond was a crazy place. You're from D.C., right?
Yeah, we're same time period, same area. So
So, man, D.C. and Richmond were wild places. Like there's people in prison today that fessed out the 50 murders back then, and stuff like that. So when Richmond got real bad, we moved off to the country for a little bit, about an hour outside of Richmond. And I was in my early teens, and I said, well, I want a dog. And kind of convincing my dad and his girlfriend, about a dog or whatnot. My dad's cool, but she's kind of, Long story short, I got a 2-year-old Rottweiler. My uncle's friend was moving to Phoenix, and he couldn't take the dog with him. Got a 2-year-old Rottweiler. And so that's, in the 90s when Rotties were hitting like that. It was a great dog. Yeah. And as time progressed, when it came time to finally put down the last Rottweiler, early 2000s, it was a sin to own them. Whether it's insurance, public eye, it's just a sin to own a Rottweiler at that point. And I was having a hard time finding what I like. Like, you got those good dogs, and then you're trying to search for them in the future, and it's like it never.
Yeah, I
understand. I always tell people, you can't compare that good dog to what's out, because you're always going to be chasing the dragon trying to get it. It seems like. But so anyway, put the dog down, the last one, and I was looking for a new breed to get into, and look here, look there, and it's and I'm watching like History Channel, Discovery Channel. They had this documentary, and I don't really want to say the name of what had happened, but it involved the case in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember with Bane and Delilah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that wasn't what the documentary was about. It was about the guys being an Aryan Brotherhood, but the dogs were mentioned.
Right.
And I was like, man, what are these dogs? You know,
so that was your first. Okay. So, it's interesting that you brought that particular instance up, because there is a lot of speculation. There is a lot of fact behind those dogs, not necessarily who had the dogs, or I don't know if you remember, or you may not even have known that this happened. So when that incident happened, there was a kennel in Canada.
Yeah, I remember her being on the interview.
Okay. Yeah. Remember. So yeah, she didn't even breed those dogs. Those dogs didn't have anything to do with her any way, shape, and form, but she wanted to take credit because she was making Canadian Presa Canarios up there. And I can't remember her name, but I remember she got banned from like Dog Fancy, Dog World. She wasn't allowed to. Yeah. So yeah. I remember it was one lady, and she was like, they asked all the red flag questions and I wouldn't sell to them. And then there was another woman you speaking of, and she was like trying to take the credit with it and what have you. I hate to say the name I'm not putting this label on somebody if it's not, but did Red Star have something to do with it? I remember. So if it's
not, I apologize to Red Star.
I believe it is. I believe the incident you're talking about was Red Star. The one I know someone got attacked by one of your dogs. That's the incident you're referring to.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that I'm pretty sure that was Red. There is another but here's the thing, that we're just talking about what was actually reported.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because then when I think about it, I'm pretty sure, because Red Star was like a predominant kennel back then. Like they were really well known. And
absolutely.
Because you had Red Star, then there was Elite Guardian, which that was Ross Poole. And then who else back then? You had Elite Guardian. You had Dan Wilson at Vulcan Canine. He was out of Canada. Really, I think at the time he had some of the best Presa Canarios at that time. And right after that incident that we were talking about in California, he ceased breeding Presa Canarios. I haven't heard or saw or talked to Dan since then, since that happened. So but again, that's just what was reported. But I know there were some other incidences in between that time, and even some recent stuff.
In all fairness, the dogs they got in the Presas, and from my understanding, mixed them with Mastiffs. So the dogs, right. So you hear all of these Presas did this and that. Well, how come the Mastiff side didn't do it? If the dogs are pressing it's always a Presa. Why didn't Mastiffs, like if it's a Labrador pit mix? Well, pit bull attacked or whatever. Well, how come the Labrador part didn't do it?
Right.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
So I've seen that, and it wasn't what happened that attracted me to the dogs. It was like, wow, man, I've been around dogs forever. I've never heard of this. And so ended up going down a rabbit hole on it, and it was just super interesting. The dogs were super interesting to me. And it was cool to me because they were secretive. Not everybody had it, which meant, okay, less chance of it being ruined. Right. And I got into it, and the first dog I seen on Google was Argos de Arima Curto, born in 99. There was an Argos, Curto had an Argos before that, but you don't ever see it. I don't even know if it was any breedings with it or whatnot, but it was Argos that was born in 99, because then there was an Argos too, which would have
there was a lot of Argos, Turcos, Yurkos back then, like over and over. You would see a lot of repeat names coming out of Spain and in the islands back then for sure. But that was a whole different, man. I tell people, like, you're talking about that was a whole different dog than what.
Thank you. Absolutely.
People are have out here right now.
Absolutely.
And even in between there, I don't know if you remember Tim Ponsbury, Tiger Guard Kennel. He was in Maryland.
I remember the name.
So yeah, he was a great guy. He also right now he's got his own breed. I don't know the particulars of the name, but it is a Pressa cross. But even in between that time, he was selling. They used to have them on when Hubley first came around. This was when it first started. He was selling them as American Alliance. So if you ever remember seeing those on Hubley, that was Tim. And they were Pressa Neo Bordeaux crosses. He was putting together, because Tim was a big Bordeaux breeder, like in the late 80s and the early 90s. And then he got into Pressas with, I know you remember Richard Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
Richard owed me some money. Like, I'll never get it. But Richard, Bill Thiefel, Tim, two other kennels. I can't remember the name off the top, but they were going back. They were the first ones. They were going over there in like a group of 5 of them. They would go over there and buy whole litters of presses for like $2,000-$3,000, and then bring them back over here and divide the puppies up. Right. And so at least this is what I was being told. I mean, from 2 or 3 of these people that were in this group. But hell, and I definitely want your input on this, because even though I got introduced to the press like quite some time before you did, but I didn't physically get a pressa until maybe only a few years before you found out about the dog. So, but within that time, I had at least 4 different presses that I don't know, now when you look at things looking back and like hindsight, like maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Like I remember I bought one. Do you remember there was a guy in Maryland way out past Upper Marlboro, man? He was basically like the puppy mill of the DMV. He had Neos, Bordeaux, Rottweilers, Ambuls.
I think I recall he was talking about, but I don't recall his name.
So yeah, he had every dog that you could want. You know what I mean? Right. And I bought a pressa from him. I don't know. Didn't have papers. I don't know if it was or what. It was extremely aggressive though. I remember that. But there was a lot of that going on, and then they trace all of that. And this is where I'm going to shut up, because then I want you to start talking. They trace all of that back to Arbaco. With Tobin and then Mac Harris at Panda Turf back in the day. Like, well, tell me what you know about, or what you've heard, what you know about Tobin and his dogs, or Mac Harris and Panda Turf.
I'll be honest with you, man. I didn't pay attention to it, and that's no disrespect, but I didn't pay attention to it. When I seen Argos and I seen Curto and everyone's pedigree, I was like, that's where I got to go. I seen the dog, and it was like, when you see the first press, at least for me, and you see the head planes and you see the black mask and these almond eyes, and you can't even see the eyes, it's like a dog you've never seen.
Right. I understand. I understand because Arbaco was the first pressa. They say he's not, but that book said different. He looked like a pressa. He still looks like a pressa. I still think that's one of the best looking dog. I don't give a fuck what he is. But he's still one of the best looking dogs. But that was, like you just said, that was my first encounter. And that, just like with Argos, was ingrained in your head. That was so I understand. That's why I wanted to talk to you, because I already know just from our conversations. Like,
right.
So
yeah. And honestly, okay. So I guess we'll kind of go into this a little bit. Let me finish up on what Curto thought real quick. we're talking now, present day, 20 some years later. 20 some years ago, every pedigree you looked at, there was Curto. Within the first, if they didn't import it, it was within the first 3 generations. If it wasn't for that, like half these dogs wouldn't exist. Kind of irritates me. You don't have to really maybe agree with some of the dogs now, whatever, but to say it didn't play a part or whatever is ridiculous.
Well, the DCCA did try to kind of downplay a lot of what Curto was when they don't exist anymore. But I don't know if you saw what I posted on my story, what is her name? Oh my God, I got it right here. But the woman who was running that, like, basically was saying,
oh, DCCA.
Yeah, the DCCA back in the day, like, they were for the Dogo Canario, but they don't. I got it somewhere over here. They don't exist anymore. It might still be in my story, but basically, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But basically, what she was saying, and she said this in this article, she said that the Pressa didn't have any kind of influence, any connection to the Neapolitan Mastiff in any way, shape, and form. Right? This is what she said. This is what they were trying to do with that. They were trying to discredit Arbaco because Arbaco was the first Pressa registered over here.
I seen something come up about that.
And it was AK, right. So AKC FSS, and he is the backbone of a lot of what they call, like, they have the American Cane Corso, or they have the American Pressa Canary. He's on a lot of pedigrees.
He is.
And so he's on a lot of pedigrees. And so they and we'll talk about this. So, but he was on a lot of pedigrees, and what happened is, because he was registered as a gray, they said he was a blue. Now, regardless, gray, blue, it's still dilution. Yeah. She was saying that there's no way that dog could have been gray or blue, because the Pressa Canario has no connection to any dogs that have any type of dilution. But we know that if you read Curto's book or any of the other Pressa book, the 2 most dogs that were mentioned, that one, and then the Curto's book, and then the 2 most dogs that were mentioned were the Neapolitan Mastiff, in the Bordeaux, and then next was the Bull Terrier, and then after that, so you got 2 dogs there.
Let's throw this around for a thought. Would that Arbaco would really she can say not Neo or what whatnot, but we know that they use, because a Pressa. Well, let's back up a little bit. A Pressa was a type of dog, not a breed of dog.
Exactly. Before that's right. Exactly.
So if Neo did the job and it's what's available, Neo's getting put in, right?
Well, and I'm glad you're saying this, because then they can't say that I'm always saying the same shit over and over. And here's someone else from my time period saying the same thing, because there was a difference even in the islands of what they felt the dog should be doing or shouldn't be doing. But if we go back even to the 15th century, when they first came over there, and then they saw the Mahoero type of dogs, and they were first using those dogs for combat, once they started losing to French Mastiffs, Neapolitan Mastiffs. So even in the 15th century, because those were the dogs that would have been available to them. Right. Which is why those 2 breeds were the most predominant crosses for the Reconstruction, because they were basically doing what they had already been doing. Just with newer phenotypes. And they would throw, so-and-so wants a Bull Terrier in his stuff. Well, so-and-so did this. He wants that. But no, bro, yeah.
The only way I can see, I'm trying to keep it on one route and not branch off on you, because there's a lot that could be said.
Yeah, as I say, it's a lot.
Yeah, but the only I wouldn't say really with that dog about what's in it, the Arbaco. I wouldn't say that doesn't make it a pressa. I would say what's not in it, and that's a Maharero.
And according to what we were told, because they're like, oh, well, Tobin crossed this dog on his property. Maybe he did. I wasn't there. Maybe he didn't. None of us were there. He's dead. Those dogs are gone. If I still had a working number for Mac Harris, I would love to, to talk to him. He's only ever been interviewed one time, and that was in the 90s. You know what I mean? And so this is the story that I was told on why Arbaco became such a problem. Is because Tobin had promised like 4 or 5 people he was going to sell them that dog. And in the end, he didn't sell any of them that dog. Prior to that incident, no one had a problem that there was a blue pressa around.
Right.
When they thought that they were going to be able to get this dog and use it in their program, because you and I know that blue color, that's a moneymaker.
Yeah.
Just imagine, right? So just imagine if like blue brindle, because it would be blue brindle was a predominant like color that was showing up in the press. Like, bro, the black dog wouldn't be popular. Like everyone would have blue brindle presses. And so, but that's the story that I was told, is that's what happened. And that's why they started down in the dog and saying it wasn't really a pressa and Tobin was a liar and he made the dog up. But they were like, prior to that, no one ever said a word about those dogs when they thought that they had a chance to buy them. And when he sold it.
It's funny, talking about with the black dogs and stuff, it's crazy to me. You have a black pressa and everybody's like, oh, that's not a pressa. That's not a pressa. It's black, right? But you got a brindle out the litter. Oh, well, that's a pressa. Now, they won't know that they're siblings, right? That they're litter mates. But you see a brindle and it's like, they'll be like, oh, well, yeah, that's a pressa. Then it's never questioned. But it's got a sibling that's black. Oh, and they see that. Well, that's not a pressa. Right. Or, okay, well, it's black. So it's, it's got something mixed in. But you don't look at a fawn and say that and think, oh, well, it's got too much English Mastiff or whatever, Bull Mastiff or whatnot in it. Right. When you see all these like just fawn dogs and whatnot. So, and I get it. I mean, I get the genetics behind it of how black is passed and created with the pressas and losing it and whatnot. But it's just, with the blue, because I know a guy, it's probably been about a year now. And he had a blue pop up. And
I've talked to at least a dozen people that have had blue brindles pop up in their litter more than once. And some people are like, bro, I just, because I don't want nobody to say nothing. You know what I mean? But my dog's DNA tested, 100%. And I said, no, bro, I believe you. I said, because, I know some kennels who are supposed to be some of the top kennels, and, you test their stuff, and then that stuff is coming back 50% a whole nother dog. But they're being sold as, you know what I mean? And so I said, in this day and age, but we have, you might have said, I've had debates with people who are like, there's no such thing as purity and standards and all that stuff doesn't really matter. And, I guess it's just what kind of person you are. It's, it's your animals. If people choose to buy from you after they listen to what you say, that's their fault. You know what I mean? Either way, whether you're a great breeder or a shit breeder, that's their fault. Either way. But I think, for someone like me or you, we're not the average buyer. So that way we're not the average breeder. But most, I don't sell anymore. But majority of the people that are contacting you, even if you don't sell to the average person, more people are contacting you or the average person wanting to talk to you about a pressa or a borable or whatever it is. And then, like live in the condo or something, they live in a condo or something like this. And I think this whole thing, because I don't want to go too far off the topic, but I think what is happening is, even since then, I was saying that to say this, is like everything starts to change depending on who has the dogs. Because I could make presses, be making my own presses in my backyard right now, and nobody would know about it. But I'm known for the Pressa. You know, people, that's what people know. They know, like, that's one of the breeds that I really, really, really love. And then let's say 4 or 5 years from now, I just make a new Instagram, YouTube, and all of a sudden I got all these Pressa type dogs in the back. And I start saying this and this, and my dogs are this, and my dogs are that. And I got a fan base. You know what I mean? I'm changing the dynamics. And then you get one of my dogs and you're happy. And maybe the dog is great, but then you test it and it's like something else. You know what I mean? But I said that, you know, this dog's a Pressa. You didn't know what the hell I was doing back there.
Right.
But as long as the dogs were performing for you, it was okay. Now that something happened or we fell off, like, oh, his dogs aren't this or his dogs aren't. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now. Like, even if it isn't involving like any mixed genes, I think obviously social media is having like a field day with everything, all pets, you know, not just dogs or cats. But I think people get lost in certain things because they're weighing in on who's saying it or who's not saying it.
Influence outweighs intelligence when it comes.
Currently, for sure.
You and I grew up with dumb phones, so we had to go be smart people. Now it's smartphones with dumb people, right?
Right.
You can sit here and you can look. You go through your Instagram, and you know that someone's got a car salesman slogan when they put up their video, right? You know, just it's the marketing, right? They market the animals like used car salesmen selling you a dream. You know, they got a little slogan. But when you look at the video, it's like, man, you got these dogs and this water is swamp green. And these dogs are in wet particle board dog houses or like transport crates you're using for a dog house that are too, like, their mind is not set on the dogs, right? Because you and I know right from the jump, like, oh, that green water, like, and I'm going to be trying to breed dogs. No, I got to have fresh water. I got to keep this disease out of these dogs. This can go to the entire yard or what, you know, good husbandry with your animals.
Right.
But you see X amount of followers, you know, the flash, the Jordans match the dog collar, stuff like that. You know, so it's, you know, if you're gonna buy dogs based off of like if you see that and it's like, that's why I'm going to buy a dog, go buy a Corvette, man.
Yeah, don't buy it. Right.
Don't go buy a Pressa. Go buy a Corvette.
Especially not a Pressa, right? Yeah, don't. Basically, what he's saying is don't buy. I mean, the way I hear, what I hear is, and what I believe as well, simply put, is I don't want to be buying animals from people who are selling animals as a side hustle.
Yeah, you're right. Right.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, I breed dogs on the side. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I get it if you maybe got like some Chihuahuas or something small, some companion
some
dogs or something like that. Right. But, you know, that's never something that I probably, I don't know, I'm not gonna say never would be in the market, but I wouldn't be looking for that. So if I was like, and I was talking to like if you were a Pressa breeder and I called you, where you are, and I called you, I didn't know you, and we start talking, and you're like, yeah, bro, I just do this on the side, you know, like, I'll be like, oh, well, right, like, yeah, I'm all right, bro. Well, I got my dinner's ready. I gotta go. No, but you got a lot of, like you said, there are a lot of gimmicks, for sure.
And it's taken over. It's taken over, and what I find as well is that a lot of, with the Pressas, a lot of people out here are trying to solicit off of you. Like if you have the dogs, they're trying to basically solicit off of you your hard work, whether it's in the form of maybe registrations or, you know, media debates or whatever it is. It just seems like there's a lot of like, there's a mentality of like, how can I play you to my benefit? And it's in sales, it's in across the board. I don't know if it's making sense of what I'm trying to put in.
What basically what you're saying, like, 'cause I deal in the domestic animal world and the exotic animal world, and it's basically the same things are happening. You know, they're just parallels. They're just different versions of. Basically, no, I understand exactly what you're saying, and it's man, I I don't know the future of animals, but what you're saying is basically the animal has been forgotten. The dog has been forgotten.
That's a way to put it.
That's
one.
You know what I mean?
Piece.
Like, because I can call somebody and buy a snake or buy a dog right now. That don't mean that I give a shit about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think, especially with social media, it's like you said, people are confusing things with other things because, like, if I filmed in my other room where all my reptiles are, right? Like, you know, and all the cages look nice and, you know, like, great. That's, you know, people see that and they automatically assume that I must be one way. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or he's got to be this kind of person or that kind of person. And that may not be true at all. You know, like you said, man, there's different levels to everything, but I think people see that, or they see what you're doing or what you're not doing. Like for instance, if you weren't doing enough bite training, then maybe you won't sell dogs this year because you didn't post enough reels. You know, it doesn't mean that you weren't doing, let me not say that you weren't doing enough, you didn't post enough. But me and you, we don't register that because we don't come from an era. We come from dog fancy. Yeah, magazine.
I'll tell you
know what I mean?
My dad's father, so what would have been my grandfather, was born in 1893. He rode a stagecoach. He went across the Oregon Trail. He quit school in 3rd grade and was cutting redwoods and stuff like a lot. So that's who raised my dad. So my dad raised me. You think
a man
I'm going to be
a group of men?
Yeah, my dad was raised by a person who grew up during gunslinging Wild West times, man. You know, and it trips people out, you know, in 2026 that my grandpa was during that era. You know, my dad had me late, his father had him late, but that's who raised me. So a lot of what's out here today, I don't relate to it. You know, I'm not knocking people. That's what they grew up in. You know, that's their era that they grew up in. I just wasn't raised on that, that kind of stuff. And I just kind of, actions speak louder than words, you know. Gotcha. And there's an expectation. You know, I was raised with expectations and standards to keep. And so that's how I you know, move towards things, and try to do it like that. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, like, so you get a presser, right? You get your first presser. Like, what was the experience like with that dog for the first like 18 months?
Oh, he was an adult. He was probably about 5 years old at the time.
So you were like me then. So I got the first, I guess what they would say, real Presa Canario that I got was an older dog too. He was like 3 years old. You know what I mean? He was huge. He was a monster. So I got him. I don't know if you remember before, because I want you to finish. God, what is their name? Tony. He used to deal with Tim Ponsbury, but they used to do bite work up in Upper Marlboro. And so it was Tony's dog, Zeus. Zeus was like a DCCA champion. He only got showed once. He won the show. He had a son named Zeus, and then I had the other son, Bardock, and they bred Bardock once, and his daughter was like a protection work champion, and I ended up with the dog. So that's interesting that you started. Well, it is interesting, but it's not uncommon with the Presa because a lot of people, even for the import, you know, they had to get older dogs if there were no, because the litters were scarce at that time, like in the early 90s, late 90s. So
this was an era. I mean, it just, when I found out about the Presas, I didn't have internet. I was at my then girlfriend's house on Google, you know, and it was dial-up. You know, trying to find stuff, you know. So the age of information wasn't quite like what it is now, where just everything is at your fingertips. But so I got him, and it's like what I had read was really it fit what I read. And something that I noticed from then to now, the dog, at least with my experience, had a sixth sense of intelligence that was unbelievable.
For sure.
And I don't know. I have intelligent dogs now. Like I have like man, you can bring them in the house and they're just sitting and they're staring, and it's like they are studying your every move, right? Like putting this formula together in their head in these calculations.
Very calculating.
Super intelligent, super intelligent. But what was back then was something that was like, I don't know how to put it into words, right? It was like something of supernatural. I mean, it was, I can't find the words. It was a
I understand
of intelligence that would almost freak you out today. Like the common dog.
Right. Yeah, no, those dogs. Yeah, those early presses were very different than all the recent presses that I've had. Like, I mean, I had one good male here, but honestly, like I told someone about 2 weeks ago, I said, because they were asking me like, you know, if you had to buy a presser, like where would you go or what would you do? And I said, to be honest with you, bro, I probably wouldn't. I said, honestly, like I said, it depends. Or I said, don't get me wrong. I said, there are 2 or 3 people that have real deal pressers. I said, but 2 of them, you ain't even in the running for those dogs. Like if they're a good breeder, they're not even going to sell you that dog because you don't even got the experience for it. You know what I mean? I said, you know, there is a softer version. I said, but honestly, like if I'm going for the presser that I know, like I'm not going to go for it because even in that great male, like I had to go through 4 dogs to find one. You know what I mean? That's a lot of time and energy and money, you know, to go through for one dog. And then if I wanted to breed, I might have to go through 4 more dogs unless I contact someone like yourself or someone that I know directly, like, hey, you know, what kind of, what do you got going on over there? I want to see if I got something that's compatible. You know what I mean?
Right. And a lot of people don't understand that. Certain, like not to cut you off, but a lot of people don't understand compatibility. They think since it's a presser, I got one, you got one, let's do it, right?
Right.
No, there's kind of like, with family of dogs, like with pit bulls and stuff, and some different lines don't always go well together. You know, it doesn't work well together. And so especially, and it takes you some time. And it takes you some time being around them, some experience, and you probably don't realize you're doing it. If you're conscious of it, you probably don't realize that you're doing it, but you're paying attention to like pedigrees and how certain lines work and whatnot on what's going to match well together for breedings. And a lot of people, it's crazy with presses because everyone has to be a breeder. Like people go get a lab or a cocker spaniel. They just go get it because they like the dogs and they want to have the dog, and that's it, right? They're a fan of the dog and they enjoy it. It seems like every single person who gets a presser, they've already got a kennel name, they've got a kennel page, and they picking up their first puppy, and every one of them's determined, well, I'm a breeder. Right. And
well, yeah, it's like that. It's like that with reptiles now, with snakes now. Like people buy a snake and the next thing they know, they got 20 and they're like, they're breeding ball pythons, which are, which is like, that's nothing. But I'm a snake breeder. I bred snakes. I had 5 ball python eggs. You can breed ball pythons, whether you've ever done it before or not. Like it's nothing to it. But, a lot of people get in the game like that as well. Like, because they just popped out a litter all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I bought a presser from so-and-so, and then my neighbor had one, and so we had a litter, or I decided to buy another one, like I said. And so, like, bro, I just sold you a dog. I thought you wanted a pet. Not necessarily a pet, but I thought you wanted a dog like companion like,
Yes.
for protection at the home, like, something like that to give
Yeah.
yourself stimulation. And, next thing you know,
Nothing. One of the things that disheartens me a lot is when, like, I sell someone a puppy, and the puppy is 9, 10 months old, and I already see it on Craigslist. Oh, I got this stud. I'm like, oh no, right? You don't know what you have now. You
yeah, you
see
don't even,
features,
right.
but you don't know what you have. I mean,
Right.
I have dogs that at 9 months that like my keepers off of a litter, right? And I'm like, yeah, I got a good feeling about this one. And at 9 months, a year or so, I'm like, I think it's going to work out. Then we get to the 2 year mark, and I'm like, nah, I don't think this is not going to be it. And I'll give the dog away, a little rehoming fee. Because now anyone else out here would probably breed it, right? And I've had breeders contact me, and I'm like, no, it doesn't match up for breeding. It showed me the devil's in the details, and it showed me a couple details that I really didn't care for, or just wasn't up to my standard, and I'm not going to breed it. But to back up, when I see the people advertising for stud service off of a puppy, I've sold them, and like I said, it was something that was going to go, like you said, a pet home, a family guardian type thing, or I've sold to someone like that, and now they've sold it to a person that's a breeder, and I'm like, I didn't sell that dog to that breeder, It kind of disheartens you a little bit, or when they do have your dogs and then they just breed it to trash, and it's like, oh,
Right.
they breed it to trash, and it's so they can have a new motorcycle for the summer or whatever it is they think, right? Going on vacation, and you're like, man, really? And it just, come on, man, one up me, do better.
No, hey. I know exactly what you're talking about, man. And like I said, it's in all facets of the animal world right now. Like everybody wants to be a breeder. They want to have animals. I'm seeing people like who have no experience, like they're buying monkeys, talking about they're going to start breeding finger monkeys now. Like, I'm like, bro, like some of these people, so you want to spend. You want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, whether it be dogs, snakes, frogs, cats. My bro, you don't even have any assets. Like, you don't even own a home or like, I've seen guys get in trouble with their landlords trying to be a dog breeder.
I had a guy I was on the phone with, and he was like, yeah, this breeder lives in an HOA and he's got 10 presses. And I'm like, so how long do you think he's going to be around? You think you're going to get that long-term breeder support, man? But what I find with a lot of people that we're describing, they come in, they do breedings, they do that 3-year run, and then they're out of it. And all they did was just basically get in the way for about 2 or 3 years, maybe 4. And all they did was just get in the way of people trying to put out good animals and stuff. And not to say what they're breeding might not have turned out good, but it's kind of a.
No, I know what you mean.
There's no long term. There's no long term. There's just let me get in here, kind of ride this wave a little bit, and a lot of times, man, they just end up kind of getting in the way.
Do you think, like, how like the pit bull always had this attraction to certain people? If you let the media tell it, it's like poor black people or poor white people,
right.
Like love pit bulls. But do you think that the press had an attraction to like specific groups of people? Like early on,
I think blockhead dogs in general probably attract a certain
that look, that pit bullish, pressa-ish, mastiff-ish, that. Especially with the ear, when you see dogs with their ears cropped and things like that, like it is appealing to anyone. I mean, it's I
think blockhead dogs in general. And now I've had Corsos too. There's certain patterns with Corso owners I notice, and But speaking with presses, because I put down my last Corso, I don't know, probably 5 going on 6 years ago. I thought it was over with. I thought Corsos at that point were over, right? Now I find out that the wave is actually still happening.
They never stopped. And
Yeah.
people, I remember when I talked to Joe, when I did my first podcast with Joe, he was asking me about, because I had Corsos back in 98, 99. Like the first 3 Corsos that I had all came from Tony indirectly. Okay. I got them from someone who got them from Tony, who wasn't supposed to be breeding them, but he bred them. I bought one, and then two guys that I knew, they bought 2 dogs, and I ended up with their dogs because they were just following, monkey see, monkey do. Type of deal. Because I tried to keep the dog hidden for a while. I didn't even want anybody to know that I had it. But back then, I was on a presser journey, but I couldn't find any presses. And then when I did find them, they were way out of my price range. I mean, I paid less than $400 for these Corsos. You know what I mean? So, and I got lucky. I just opened a trading post one day, and they, it was right. I was like, man, I was like, in my head, I'm like praying. I'm like, Pressa, Staffordshire Bull Terrier. Come on. You know what I mean? Like, open it up. I start going through it. Don't see none of that. I saw Connie Corso. And I'm like, okay, well, that'll work. You know what I mean? And so I went and I got the dog. And actually, before I talk about those dogs, but the reason why the Corso, the run started, because those two, the press and the Corso, hit around the same time. But those presses, remember, Mike Satilli was making those Corsos up in, you know what I mean? They were making those dogs. So the Presso was coming over, and those dogs were older, most of them. They were adults and up, the majority of them, and they were coming off of farms. They had been working, been around big animals. And they weren't taking no shit from these strangers who were importing them. You know what I mean? People I know, even myself, got
lit up, didn't they?
Bro, they
got lit up.
They were terrified of the Presso, that early 90s, the 90s, early 2000 Presso. People were terrified of that dog. And that's why they started, and that's why everybody started getting Corsos. Like, oh, well, Corso, it was a little more polished. It was more right. It was more polished. It came in blue. So, right there, that was a big thing. And nobody knew, that this was a band dog, an American band dog, or American Connie Corso is a perfect name for it. But I'll say this, because I don't know if you saw that thing with Tony and what's his name from I forgot his name. The debate that they did, on Joe's show. A little bit, and I had to turn it at some point, man. I ain't gonna hear people argue nonstop. No disrespect to either of them, but I'm like, no, I did. I seen some of it. Well, they were talking about like how unstable kind of a lot of those early Corso crosses were back then, and I will say is of the 4, because I had 3 Scandifio dogs and then 2 Belmonte dogs, right? Okay. And I will say this, man, those dogs weren't fucking around. Yeah. Like they were trying to bite my friends. You know what I mean? Like my friend, we come over, we were smoking a blunt on the side of the house one day in Hyattsville, and Mary was sitting there smoking, and I let my aunt let the dog out. And I let him out she let him out in the back, and then I opened the fence. He could come out with us, and she came around and sat right next to me, chestnut brindle bitch, real nice. Sat next to me, was looking up, and my friend, sitting there, we're talking. He bends down to try to pet her, and she, this puppy was 4 months old. Yeah. The other ones that I had, like those dogs were protective, and they were pretty intelligent. They weren't the most intelligent, but I can say there was definitely some instability there. For sure. Like I didn't experience maybe what some of the other people may have went through or stories that I've heard, but that dog. So even thinking about that now, if the Presso was worse than that, like it's probably maybe it's a good thing I didn't get one early on. You know what I mean?
Well, they there's a debate, and I get a lot of people to ask me, should a pressa be like where it can only the family touch it? Should it be social? Da, 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 da. A lot of people ask me. Okay, so that first pressa I had, that I was talking about, so intelligent, right? I could take that dog. He had dog aggression, but he understood the dogs in the house were okay. He could go anywhere. The dog, I mean, and I could be on the street talking to somebody downtown Richmond. Dog, he'd lay down because he knew, like, well, this ain't a threat.
Right.
If there was a threat, he knew it, and that was all she wrote. Okay, so that dog, social, whatnot, good to go on that. Now, the dogs, like my family talk about Argos, had a male directly off of Argos. That dog won't mess with nobody else outside of that house. And I tell people, I don't want to say most, a lot of people out here with presses today could not handle one of those dogs. That old Curto dog, and they've had a couple of them, and they wouldn't have handled that shit. And I see how unstructured a lot of people are with their dogs. And I imagine, when you see a little video or something like that, and I'm like, man, if they would have had one of those dogs,
right,
your ass would be on the news. There'd be a lawsuit, and there'd be a breed ban. And that's kind of stuff sticks with me. That's why I'm pretty particular who I sell to. I turn down a lot of people for sales.
Right.
You hit me up goofy, and you kind of post things you're saying, just it don't take me long. Right. I've been around it a long time. So chances are, before you ever message me, I already got it in my head which way it's probably going to go. And I'm giving you an opportunity to prove that I'm wrong. And I'm like, nah, this is probably not the dog for you. It's not going to work.
But that's what a good breeder should do.
I feel so, because I feel I hold a responsibility for the future of the breed. And if I'm putting it in the hands of every, dum-dum out here, well, then we're not going to have a breed. You have to police yourself, or else there's going to be police.
Right. For sure. And that's the thing, is like a lot of the practices and policies from the early breeders in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, a lot of that stuff has fallen off with these new breeders. I
remember, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to cut you off, but I'm going to give you a prime example of it. When I got into the presses, it was X amount of dollars. You're not going to get paperwork for this. If it shows these qualities and and it's good to breed, then it's going to be this much for paperwork, right? So now everybody, and I guess maybe it's a sales drop, so everybody had to give paperwork, because they're like, well, why am I going to spend X amount of dollars for a dog? I ain't even got the papers. Well, your ass ain't going to do nothing with the papers anyway, but put them in your underwear drawer if they even make it there.
Right.
They're going to get put somewhere, and you're going to tell your buddies, yeah, I paid X amount of dollars papers, right? But you ain't doing them because, like I know, the paperwork, not only for breeding, but it was for dog shows.
Right.
To go to the show. Well, ain't none of y'all won't go train your dog. I know you ain't taking it to the show. So the only reason else you want it is to feel like you got your money's worth because you got the papers, or to breed, right? But it was very common practice years ago that you're not necessarily going to get paperwork with the dog. And if you like these type of dogs, it probably didn't make a difference to you, because, kind of go back to the people who own Cocker Spaniels and stuff. They just enjoy having the dog.
Right.
So it didn't really make a difference for them. But all I can imagine is probably sales probably dropped off, and customers demanding more, or, you need to be able to provide more. And so paperwork's coming with the dog and stuff. And I'm sorry, I'll cut you off, but yeah,
No, it's good.
it's
No,
it was a different standard, as you were saying. It was a different standard of selling dogs back then. And just one more example, I remember on people's applications for dogs. Do you have a fenced yard? Do you own a home or do you rent? Different stuff like that was on applications. And if they didn't feel comfortable selling you a dog because of whatever like that, you weren't going to get one.
Right. No, it's nothing like that anymore in any of the industries. I remember having conversations. I probably talked to every person in dog fancy or dog world that was related to the breeds that I wanted in the 90s, and everybody in reptile and amphibian magazine and all the other publications, for hours and hours on the phone, even when I didn't have money to buy anything, and I was calling them knowing like I ain't got, and they didn't care. They didn't care because they just wanted to talk about reptiles or dogs with someone. You know what I mean? And at the end they'd be like, "Man, if you're ever around, you want to see the dogs, come up." And so for me, it was like, yeah, if I ever get some money, get one of these bull terriers or whatever it is, like I damn well come up there, But that relationship
that was the difference back then too.
But
and it's kind of
social media,
how I exactly, and it's kind of how I still operate as well. Like, I don't want you coming to me because I made some cool viral video or something like that. Okay, that grabs attention, but I don't want to do a video where it persuades you to come purchase from me like I'm selling a Lexus, right? I'm the Lexus salesman, so I'm trying to persuade you to come purchase a Lexus. No, I want you to be interested, and that's why you came, not because I persuaded you to come buy one. If I'm having to persuade you to buy a Pressa, you don't want a Pressa,
right? Well, you got people now.
I guess just we're some steps, and you calling those people back then. They know, and it obviously was a different era. Okay, he's actually pursuing this because that's where he wants to be. We're not trying to persuade him to be here. Yeah,
and that's you have a pocket of people now who are like, I want a pet, and then they just get online and they start looking at stuff. And the internet now, the way you buy animals, almost any animal, any domestic animal for the most part, is set up differently. So you don't I can buy a snake while we're doing this interview. I don't have to talk to anybody. You know what I mean? I could buy a dog and I don't have to even really talk to the breeder. So when you have people behind breeding programs like that, what do you what can you really expect from that at the end of the day, especially with a dog, something like a powerful breed like a Pressa. And and this is a dog that it's gotten some bad press, not a ton of bad press, but it has gotten some bad press over the years. And it's unfortunate because of that bad press. The dog has also become less of what it is in the hands of the average person. Like we said in the beginning, it's nothing like it used to be. And it's hard to, like, if I were to ask you, like, if you needed to buy 2 dogs right now, like if you needed two more dogs for your yard, like how difficult or would it not be difficult for you to go and find 2 great dogs to add to your yard?
Well, be honest with you, there's only 3 kennels I pay attention to.
See, that's what I'm saying. And so then
the rest of them, I don't even. I mean, they might have nice dogs, whatever, but there's only 3 kennels I pay attention to, and those are really the 3 that line up with the type of blood that I have, anyhow. And so that's a shout out to D7 Islas, Furios, and De La Arena and Arima Curto. Outside of that, that's what I've had luck with. It's what's worked for me.
You're programming. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And it sucks because if 1 or 2 of more of those kennels like stop producing or whatnot, and then you were like, man, I really need some dogs. You know what I mean? Like you go 5 or 6 years from now, and then your dogs start getting up there, and you start looking around, like trying to figure out what the next move is. And you're like, man, so and so doesn't even breed anymore, and neither does so and so. So I got one kennel left. Like, so now you got a hard question to ask yourself.
The only saving thing is putting stuff on ice.
Right. I mean, and I'm gonna say, like, so if you haven't
that's
done
not
that,
guaranteed.
right? And I was gonna say, if you haven't done that, and even then, you know, that's a compromise of integrity, frozen sperm in general. Like you may get something great, you may get something with neurological issues because it's been compromised through that. It's something that's not talked about. I don't think very much at all when we talk about.
I don't think anyone really has. I don't think anyone really has.
It's the same thing with when you say, I love like drawing these parallels because like in the reptile world, there's this debate, and they have the same debate in the dog world. You know, the dog world, the debate is raw versus dry. In the reptile world, the debate is live feeders versus frozen thawed. Well, if anyone who just knows the basics about nutritious and freezing food and storage of food knows, well, once you kill the animal, it starts decomposing. So it's losing its nutritional value already. So, okay, you kill it, but you got to butcher it up, and then you got to package it and then put it in the freezer. That is another compromisation of its integrity. Then you have to thaw it again. That's more, you know, it's more on the integrity. So you're losing.
You're losing enzymes, right?
You're losing maybe 20-30% nutrients. Obviously, your animals can eat it and it's going to be great. I mean, it's going to be good. It's going to suffice, but maybe you have to feed twice as much now. You know what I mean? Because that integrity has been compromised. But it's crazy because like even on that debate, it's like I have you know, friends of mine who won't, you know, they only feed frozen thawed animals. And I'm like, bro, you're crazy. And I have friends who are like, I don't feed raw ever at all. Raw. And I'm like, you're tripping. I don't get mad at them. You know what I mean?
No,
like, some people will get mad at you. Like, oh, you don't feed raw, you're an idiot. Da, 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 da. I'm like, nah, bro, I don't. I'm not mad at you for feeding raw, and I'm not mad at you for feeding dry. I'm going to give you some facts, and you know, you don't got to do it. I'm just saying, like, look, check this out. So it's like,
well, that's like tattoos. That's like tattoos. If you don't have tattoos, then the people look like they look at people with tattoos, but a person with tattoos don't ever look at the people without and be like, why ain't you got it?
Right. I don't know why it's weird like that. But you know, I think another issue that we have is like, you know, just and the Pressa is definitely a breed that falls into this category is people debating facts. Like we can't debate facts. That's like, I mean, like
the world now does not operate on facts,
and I think that's
so we have a generation out here that if you present a fact, they don't have anything to say. It's pivot. Let's go to the next thing and try to stump you there. And then so it's something, a person who presents facts in modern times is basically constantly defending themselves if they're trying because no one cares about facts. It's either feelings, I feel like, or whatever. And it's hard. And you're exactly right. The facts are a thing.
Yeah, I just don't understand. And it's to me, you know, I guess it's in the age range and the time that we came up, and I'm like, bro, how are we having a debate over this? Why?
You're right.
I didn't write the standard. You didn't write the standard. The standard says this. What is the debate? Right. You know what I mean? Like, what is the debate? If you don't like it, go make your own dogs.
Go make your own, man.
You know what I mean? You can't, and that's like, why is it like, it's crazy, bro. Like, I got into the Pressa, did my thing with it a little bit, left, didn't do anything with canines, like formally, like had a dog or two here, always had a Pressa, you know, Pressa here, Pressa there. 15 years, didn't do anything, you know, with the breed. Talked to some people here, come back.
You came back and they were still arguing over the same thing. It's like a soap opera. Watch that shit for 10 years. They never left the room.
No, this is not what I expected to come back into it and hear about all these great dogs and so and so did this and the pressa is now like, but it was none of that. And it's sad because it's in my top 5 favorite breeds, and it's unfortunate is that there are very few places to go in my professional Pressa Canario experience to go and get a Pressa Canario like now, like you got Pressa Canario Uruguay, which I think is a great kennel. You know what I mean? Their dogs are,
Gonzalo.
Yeah, their dogs are tested, proven, transparent. This guy, he doesn't really say much. He doesn't do much. You know what I mean? It kind of reminds me of the 90s. It kind of reminds me of Greg Hermes' ad that he used to have for his Carver pit bull terriers. I don't know if you remember the ad. It was a picture of him holding the dog like this, and it was like no pictures, no such and such and such. It was like it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like
there ain't no smoke and mirrors about it.
$20 for videotape. You know what I mean? Like that's and that's kind of how. And I respect that, bro. He's like, these are my dogs. This is what I'm doing with them, and like it or not, like if you want one, come and get it, and I'm showing you what I got going on. And then his dog, the price is great. If you didn't have to beat, now they got that 6-month law in place. So that sucks. But it's crazy because you can get a great dog in some places overseas of any breed, not just a Pressa, but you can get a great Pressa in a few other countries for a really fair price. And then you can come over here and spend $6,000 on a dog that ain't tested, that ain't proven, that ain't nothing. You know what I mean? But like you said, a gimmick with a slogan behind it, and that guy is selling. He's selling out. And meanwhile, you got you or me or whoever, like we're because you're screening people. So that's limiting your sales. You're not just trying to who doesn't want to make money? If you got puppies, if you're whatever you're not keeping, you want to sell them. Even if you sell them for $100, it doesn't denate the value of the animal. That's just what you chose. You can sell them, you can give them away for free. It's still going to be a great dog or a shit dog. The price, doesn't determine. But some people think that, like, oh, because I paid $10,000 for this dog, it's got to be a great dog. Right. It's a $10,000 price tag said something like, bro, that's very far from the truth at all. It doesn't. You could get a dog off of Craigslist and it could be an awesome dog. You know what I mean? And you got
people put a lot of emphasis on that. They want to say, oh, I bought a dog X amount of dollars, right? And a person, you could sell them the best Pressa walking this planet for $100, and they wouldn't go get $1,400 of training on it.
No, they wouldn't even get insurance. They wouldn't even get health insurance on it.
But they'll go buy a $5,000 dog to say I bought a $5,000 dog, and it could be just I don't want to say a garbage dog, but because I don't want people with selling $5,000 dogs think I'm calling their stuff garbage, but it could be a garbage dog, but they want to say, yeah, man, he got a $5,000 dog. He's doing it like that. But the best one walking the earth you could sell for $100, they ain't gonna spend $1,400 in training because they can't say, oh, I got this and show it, and it was this much money.
Yeah, if you sell me $100 Pressa and it's that,
right?
I'm like, look, bro, I don't know how much he gonna charge you.
It's just a kind of an analysis of where people's head is and stuff,
It's like Coke and Pepsi. You know what I mean? Or it's like when they take tap water and they put it in different fancy bottles and tell you that it came from Antarctica or so. And then you're like, oh my God, this is like the best water ever. And he's like, yeah, bro, that shit came out of my toilet. Like, oh, I thought this was glacier water. Like, you know what I mean? Like, right.
Yeah, man, it's a lot. It's a lot of crazy stuff out there with the dogs. It's interesting, I guess. That's the best word I can find to describe it. It's an interesting breed to be in. It is animals in general. Talking about like influence over intelligence. I was watching a podcast a while back, and they were interviewing a person who does podcasts. And they spoke on dogs for about 20 minutes. And the man that was being interviewed, like every breed that he named, he was mispronouncing. It was Napoleon Mastiffs and, stuff like that. Then he said, I don't even want to say. It was misinformation. I don't want to say it because I don't want to think like I'm coming for him or something like that. But it was 20 minutes of talking dogs. And I'm like, well, this guy's done said, this ain't lining up. This isn't the first person of this race to create a breed of dogs. You've mispronounced every breed that you've named. And then the next hour was him talking about how to get followers, the marketing, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. And I'm like, well, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. How can we get more people to follow misinformation?
Right. I know. Yeah, I mean, I know who you're talking about. So yeah, that was I had made a comment on that post as well, on a post about that, and I'm just like first of all, what you're saying ain't even true, and you know what I mean, like and then second, like, why does it matter? Because the person who did do that isn't even going around saying
they did. They did.
Not even going around saying that. So
yeah.
But yeah,
and if the person who talk, man, I'm not trying to kick you. But what I am saying is there's a lot of stuff out here with marketing.
But education is important, bro. Like it's not.
And that's what I'm trying to say. Right. You got to be careful what you're putting out. Put out facts.
Because because whether it's and I agree with you. Like it's not even, sometimes I do, like, if I have a problem with someone, that's different. But when I talk about something like what you're talking about, where somebody says something wrong or incorrect, you got to understand is, like, especially if you've got a large following.
That's what I'm saying.
Like you said, you got so-and-so thousands of people who just heard this. Some of them may know, like, that's not correct. And, they'll go and they'll do their thing. But then the ones who don't, like, it's the same thing like Reptile World. Like, oh, so-and-so said it was that easy to do this or such and such and such. And so then they go and spend all this money and they buy this expensive snake and then it's dead in 3 weeks because of something that they heard. I think we need more of it. It's not, there's nothing wrong with debates. There's nothing wrong with correcting misinformation. Like, if I do it to myself. Like, I've gone back on podcasts that I've done 4 or 5 months prior and gone back in the comments and like, hey, at minute 29, I said such and such and such, and I just found out that that's not true, and it is that's me. But
you know what that kind of comes back to as well? Raised during a generation of self-accountability. So it's like you're your own worst critic. So you analyze yourself and okay, you hold yourself accountable. So when you make a mistake, you're like, okay, let me, I don't want to go further with that. I made a mistake on this. This is how it is.
Your credibility, man, especially if you're trying to get money from people or you want people to listen to what you're saying, because that goes a long way. Like, man, that's crazy. That dude went back 4 months later. You know what I mean? On a podcast he already had done and went back in the comments or whatever. But that makes someone like, I want to talk to this guy, which is why I wake up to 2-3 emails every other day from people like, oh, I saw you on such and such podcast, or because they like that. Like, oh, this guy's got integrity. I want to talk to them.
Integrity.
I feel okay to spend $2,000 with this guy on whatever it is he's asking for because I saw him do this, that, and the other, and then he even took it a step further. And that's what I look for. Like when I talk to certain people, like I was like for the whole social media thing, like I never wanted to do this shit. I kind of like you, that people kept asking me like, no, bro, we need you to come out and get the people like you and other people who either don't want to come on or they're not going to get interviewed by the right people. It's going to be some, the basic da 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 da, and and it's you're not really having a real conversation with this person, because like when people see this and they see us talking, they're going to be like, okay, these are two people, two different walks of life, same area, dealing with the same breed, telling similar things with, still difference of opinions here and there, but there's a lot of integrity happening between these two people. Like, this is somebody that I would want to talk to about, or possibly like, hey, when you have a Presa Canario litter, could you possibly let me know, or could I stay in contact with you? Like, that's really what this shit is about. But for most people now coming up, it's not about that anymore. You know what I mean? All they really care about is, because here's the thing is, I guess you don't have to sell puppies anymore if your YouTube or your TikTok channel is booming. If you're making more money.
That's what I'm trying to say. We're like solicit. They're trying to solicit off of breeders and stuff. And
you may not even be having a litter. Like, what was the guy? And we can definitely talk about this guy, because they made a page on Instagram for Canada Presa, because he was just ripping everyone off, lying to everyone. But it was like him. He had all those followers. The dude said he had like 89 and 0 in the show ring. Bro, that's not even possible.
I forgot about him. Yeah.
For his age, he didn't even have enough dogs. He was never listed as like even completing the show. But that's what he was telling people, and people were spending money. And then they're like, oh, where are the papers? And they're like, you're not getting no papers, or something's wrong with my dog. Blocked. Or I remember I went to his page, and this is definitely a perfect example of what we're saying is, he had the same pictures of him at the airport, the same picture like 10 times with 10 different dates, saying that he was there dropping off puppies like every single time. And he was asking people, because before I knew who he was, I called him just to see, I wanted to see who this guy was. I called him. We talked. As soon as he said $10,000, I mean, I was done, but I let him keep talking. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know who you are in the Presa world to be talking about $10,000. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I listened to him, and I was like, all right, bro, if I'm interested, I'll get back with you. And from there, I was just like watching, and more people were like, yo, bro, he just sold, dog to so-and-so, and it was all messed up. And then so-and-so got a dog, didn't get the papers. But he was, I mean, in a sense, bro, he was basically using all of that to sell puppies. And then I have a friend in Canada who I have done, I don't know how many podcasts with, who also likes Presa Canarios, and he's never owned one, but he was like, man, if I ever, get the space, I'd love to get one. He messaged me one day and was like, man, there's a guy on, I forget what it's called, but it's like the Canadian Craigslist. And he's like, there's a guy on Craigslist, like our Craigslist, selling Presa Canario puppies for like, I think it was like $4,500 or something. I can't remember the price. And so he sent me the ad, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, bro, that's Canada Presa. I was like, that's because they banned him. They keep banning his pages from Instagram. I said, so now he's selling his puppies for like a third of the cost that he was asking on your Craigslist. I was like, but that's crazy. Like, you went from who sells top champion 89 and 0 show dogs on
Craigslist. Yeah.
But and that's the thing. And when you were talking about people listening to the wrong information, how many people do you think heard wrong information either from him or from someone else, and then ended up there and then spending that money? And and then the problem with that is that gives the Presa itself kind of like a fucked up reputation, especially
people. Right. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm particular, I try to be particular where my dogs go, who I do breedings with and stud services with and stuff like that, because people love to be your friend and try to get all the info they can to go do janky stuff, man, And when they do that, and you're, you know, kind of tight with them like that, well, then that kind of is a reflection of you. You know, people can see it as a reflection of you, just like how we're talking about him with the dogs and stuff, and it gives the dogs a bad name, you know. And yeah, it's messed up like that. It's messed up like that. I try to be a little more, just you know, this breed is full. I hate to say it. I hate to say recorded because it puts such a dim light on it. But this breed is full of sociopaths, psychopaths, liars, cheats.
I agree with that.
The best way I can put it, I heard Madison Parker say one time about being in the Game Dogs back then, he said, you're jumping in bed with a bunch of pirates. And that's true words with it, you know, to quote him on it, that's true words with it. And a lot of these guys out here, man, it's hard to find good people. If you get into presses, you better like presses, because if you're getting into it for like this, you're going to find your best friend because both of y'all own a presser. Not happening.
Right.
Not happening.
Right. No, it's the animal world in general, bro. It's just turning into a shit show. Because a lot of the people who had the passion, either they're dead, they're dying, they don't do it anymore.
They don't come on interviews.
They don't want to do podcasts or things like that. And I respect it, because like I said, I was the same way. And I agree with you, like you, especially like dealing with the presser, you know, there weren't a ton of people to talk to back in the day. Now, I don't even know how many presser Canario breeders exist now. You know what I mean?
The owner's a breeder, ain't they?
Well, right. And I remember when I decided, like, because originally I was done with dogs. I wasn't getting nothing. And I was looking for geckos. Like, you know, I ended up with my presses, the last set of presses that I had, because I was trying to buy some geckos. And
like a year ago or so, maybe 2 years now. When you had that,
about 2.5 years ago. Well, no, this would have been about 4 years ago.
Okay, my timing might be off. Man.
No,
Get a little older.
This would have been about 4 years ago. Like I wasn't even looking for dog. I didn't want dog. I didn't want to clean up dog shit, because like, one, I don't believe in kennels. And I'm not knocking anybody who's got kennel runs. I just don't like kennels. I'll do pins, but I don't have the space here to do that. But I like my dogs to free roam in and out of the house. But I was like, man, you know, I don't really think I want to deal with that. So I was like, but you know what? You know, I'm always game for reptiles. You know, I've always got stuff here, but I was looking for some particular geckos, and then I found them. And in the midst of me, like, literally trying to buy them, like, I'm trying to get the info on where I'm sending the money to, the guy's like, bro, somebody just bought them. And I'm like, oh. I was so discouraged, I started looking at dogs.
Yeah.
and originally I was looking at Dogo Argentino. And I was like, I've had a ton of presses. I'd really like to have a Dogo, but I couldn't find it. Dogo, like presses, in my opinion, it's hard to find good ones. And
hard to find good Dogo Argentinos.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to find. I think it's hard to find a good dog currently, right now, of any breed.
I agree with that as well. Opinion. Yeah, I think now, not necessarily your case, but I think a lot of the case with Dogo Argentino is a lot of people have an unrealistic expectation. You know, they might want to, it's going to guard the house and do protection work and stuff like that. And then a lot of times they don't pan out that way. So, hey, you might have picked the wrong breed for it. Now, I'm not saying they won't, but Dogo's really not supposed to be a man bite.
Right.
And so a lot of times people have a wrong expectation with it. And that seems like a wave, too, that's kind of kicking a little bit is Dogo Argentino at the moment as well.
I mean, they're very, when you have Dogo Argentino, Presa Canario, and then you have the Fila. I don't want to throw the Cade Bow in there, because it is another reconstructed dog, and they use the reconstructed Pressa to make it. Plus, I've never been around one, so I don't want to throw that dog in there, even though it doesn't, from all those Iberian dog out of obviously the Dogo and the Fila aren't, but those three breeds are very similar, especially the Dogo Argentino and the Presa Canario, because depending on what you know or what you think or what you believe or who you are, who you're told, like the killer of Cordoba was a Perro de Presa from Spain that they brought over there, and we're talking the real deal Presa.
You're talking about the Cordoba fighting dog, the white one that you always see, the black and white picture. Yes.
I think, to be honest, I've heard this and I've always thought this. I think those were like the discarded Presses that they really didn't want because they were all white, and all white have it's a lack of color, and those dogs sometimes have a lot of issues, and they are mental, obviously, as we know with that breed. I think those were the dogs that they were sending over because
possibly
a lot of those dogs came over. I don't say a lot, but enough for them to use as a base dog to create an entirely new breed. And when we look at the pictures, the old pictures of the Perro de Presa, it looks just like a white Presa Canaria. But the original pre-1970 Presses, because that dog, the Dogo was finished in 1921, 22. So that means they took them 20 years to do it. So that means that they had Pressas. They would have probably, and they were having Pressas from the late 18th century then.
Oh, when the Dogo Argentino was finished?
Yeah, because
I think it was 1927. But you might be right. It's neither here nor there. But it was in the 20s.
20. So for them to go through a 20 to somewhere between 20 and 30-year process means they had to be collecting the dogs pre-1900. So somewhere between maybe 1890 and the 1900 was when they would have been getting these dogs, and those dogs would have been in. I would have loved to see
that'd been interesting.
You know what I mean? To one of those dogs, and that we still that's a type of dog. That dog never became a breed. And it's interesting because the Dogo, kind of like the old Cordoba fighting dog, went on to create another breed, almost like a subspecies, the Perros Pampas Argentina, which base dog is a Dogo Argentino. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting, how things kind of repeat themselves over time. And this is a breed I'm very, very interested in. I befriended the president of the breed club, Lisandro Libat, down in Argentina, and I was like, man, on
the Pampas breed.
Yeah, on the Pampas. Yeah. And interesting because he told me same thing. There was some disagreement about the lines and the phenotypes, and some people wanted to use the dog for game dog stuff, and then other people wanted to use the dog. Well, it's all game hunting, but dog on dog and then dog on animal, like hunting boar or whatever. But they also wanted to use it for dog fighting, and this dog, they started working on this, and this is crazy. They started working on this dog in the late 70s and 80s, the same time they were reconstructing the Presa Canaria. They were working on the Pampas. That's crazy, like how all this stuff was like happening, and none of these people knew. You know what I mean? But at the same time, they're all were connected at the same. Like, it's crazy.
Well, you just brought up two things, man. So now I'm gonna ask you a couple questions.
Oh shit!
All right, first one's gonna be the easy one. Talking about game dogs. Can game dogs overlap? Your opinion. This ain't a sit-up, by the way. It's your opinion. Can game dogs overlap into certain breeds? Can dogs be game of other breeds?
So we're talking about, so before I answer, let's just say, like, I take giant schnauzers, right? So we're talking about me going and get a bunch of the best giant schnauzers that I can find, and then turning them into game dogs over time? Or am I just getting the best schnauzers I can find? And I'm like, I want to, because I feel that personally, on its own level, that I could take any breed. And if, once you start reprogramming that RNA, it's going to take some time. I'm not saying it's going to happen 2-3 years. I'd say maybe 15 years down the road, but then, game.
Then that means if you can do it, then that means it would be that gameness would exist in other breeds.
I think, dogs in themselves can't. Here's the thing. This is one thing we definitely got to say and understand about canines for everyone in general is there is only one species of canine, and that's canine, familiaris. Like, that is it. Every dog is the same species. Every single dog is the same species.
So like what, 90, I think what is it? 99 point something percent, they are identical. Right. So a Chihuahua and a Great Dane is 99 point whatever percent identical.
Right. Well, and the same exists even with life. You share about the same DNA, that much DNA with a plant or a fly. It's that 2%. That 2%. That's just incredible. So yeah. But I think that you can reprogram canines because they are a soft gene animal. I talked about that before. It's going to take you some time, but the work is already there. You just got to, like I say, my biggest thing is diet and environment, but environment and diet in that order, because the diet comes from the environment. If we're talking about anything in the wild, or skip that. Let's just say your kennel, your yard is the environment. So everything that happens there is based on that environment. So if you live somewhere where you can hunt hogs or whatnot regularly, and you've got giant schnauzers, then it is very possible for you to, over time, to get those done. Now, I don't know how well. Now, we're not saying they're going to be superior. We're not saying that they're going to be superior.
It'll be the next Mayday, but
hey, you never know. But anything is possible. But that's not what we're saying. But we're saying, but it you can definitely do that. That's how they created the game dog. There was no American Pit Bull Terrier, just like there was no Presa Canario. And all that stuff had to exist. So they were taking these dogs, but they took dogs that were based on the environment. The environment was this. Okay. Environment was that. And then what comes from your environment? Your diet. That's, to me, that's 80% of life is diet and environment for me, you, dog, cat, snake, plant. Because if the environment is fucked up, the diet is going to be fucked up. And if the diet is fucked up, then that's all she wrote. You know what I mean? So
environment is, I think a lot of people miss your diet, because diet don't just necessarily mean food. Right. Your diet is what you're seeing, what you're ingesting as a human, what you're watching on TV, what you're hearing every day. That's part of it. Yeah, it's environmental, but that's part of your diet because it's what you're ingesting.
Exactly. Yeah, RNA. People don't see. We keep hearing people talking about. Everybody wants to be on this genotype, phenotype. Everybody keeps talking about phenotype. I keep hearing that. That's great, but you can't have genos and phenos without, you can't have, let me go back. Phenotype and DNA. That's all they keep talking about. Phenotype, DNA. Mm-hmm. And that's great, but you can't have DNA without RNA, and you can't have phenotypes without genotype. So what good is knowing what a phenotype is if you don't even understand what the fuck a genotype is, or how to program if you don't know how to program your RNA? And that's basically what you said, bike training. That is programming your RNA. People don't understand. I remember I did that episode, Biology versus Breeding, and it got interrupted by a troll, but we got our point across for the most part. But what I was saying is if you, and this applies to every living thing because of how RNA works. Let's say you got a 2-year-old Presa, and then I got a 3-year-old Presa, and we want to put them together and have a litter, right? So everything that you've done with your dog over the 3 years and everything that I've done with my dog over everything, even if this dog was in a car accident with me, if he ate the worst, every single thing that I put into his DNA and his RNA, his geno and pheno, and the same thing is going to be passed on. For the combination of those two periods. It's like, even when you have kids, and if you have kids, where you can definitely attest to this, or even if you have siblings that have kids, is like, man, you sound like your dad, or you sound like your mom, or you walk like your mom, or you even have the same food cravings as your father or your grandfather, because that is the RNA. You know what I mean? Those are the memories. Because why? Somebody was eating a lot of chocolate and peanut butter during the time of copulation. You know, so your kid got everything from, if you were 24 and your girlfriend was 21, and then you guys had a kid at those ages. So everything she did for 21 years and everything you did for 24 years goes into that kid. He gets it all.
A lot of people don't realize it.
They don't realize that. So you got to be careful how you program.
Well, let me ask you this, not to cut you off, but let me ask you this. So I have kind of, going down that rabbit hole, I kind of have my speculation on it. Let's talk about breeding dogs for just a second here. Do you think that breeding a dog at, let's say, a Presa, right? Do you think using a male at 4 years old, do you think he will produce a different puppy breeding him at 4 years old versus at, say, 10 months old?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
I believe so, because to me, the hormonal, and talking about,
that's one aspect of it.
So best way to say 4-year-old sperm is probably, a 4-year-old's semen is probably more mature, whatnot, versus a 10-month-old.
Well, let's also keep in mind that 4 years old is human years. So we do that in dog years. That's, you know what I mean? Like that's
and dog years, he's working on his 401k.
Yeah, right. So, and I think as a whole, in general, and I'm guilty of this too, and I try to talk, to try to reprogram myself as well on some things, is I think people forget that. So when we do speak, because generally that's how we talk. Oh, he's 1, he's 2, he's 3, and he is for us. But I think we also need to start keeping in mind as a whole, just dog people in general, that the dog is a lot older than 2 or 3. And so when you are breeding or when you are working this dog, you're like, oh, he's only 4. He can take it. Like, he probably can to an extent, but he's 4. He's getting older. He's not getting younger. So what he was doing at 2, if you were running him for an hour at 2, I probably wouldn't be running him for a straight hour at 4. Because he's older, his body it's deteriorating. Like, that's life. That's what the fuck happens. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing you can do to avoid that. So, I definitely I know that's a fact. I mean, you have geneticists, other geneticists, which is funny because I'm an animal geneticist. So, but you have other geneticists who have even said that they believe that nothing. This is what they say. Everyone is different, but nothing will ever be better than the first generation of anything. They say you have some that say every generation after that will never be as better as but obviously we're talking about doing things, breeding, whether it be human or dog or animal at, proper maturity levels, obviously. Like under normal circumstances, I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, I watched a 20-minute video on it. And this guy, he was like, he's like, the first generation is always the best. And his explanation was, he said, because, the sperm, he said, it's the first time, you know what I mean? He's like, everything there is intact. And he said, the more, like you were saying, the older you get, the more it starts to break down. The more you do, the more unhealthier most people, that was his thing, the excuse was most people don't get healthier as they get older, they become unhealthier. And so he was like, and that's why. because we do say some people like motherfuckers we might have went to high school with, looked one way, and then you see them 20, 30 years later, and they're all like sagged out, man. Like, damn, I didn't even recognize you. You know what I mean? And so,
if they're still around,
or and he was like, when you're younger, your genetics, you still have some instabilities in your genetics, and so it's like you can see, like I know a guy who started going bald at 19 because genetically the same thing happened to his father. You know what I mean? And his son probably gonna have that shit too. So it's like, genetically, maybe let's say like 21, 22, your vision starts to go out. But that's not what happens to the average person at 21, 22. But that's something recessive. And so then you find out, like you start talking to your mom, like, oh, my mom, my vision. And then she's like, oh, well, your Uncle Albert, when he turned 21, or your great grandfather, they said when he turned 21, his vision started. Because, you can go back. And that's the thing about DNA. Another thing that we don't talk about enough is it can go back 7 generations. After that, they're like, you're not even related anymore because the 7th generation is like 2%, related to the top. So after that, you're done. So, which is why people in horse breeding and dog breeding and cat breeding, we started doing line breedings and inbreedings and programming basically. And so, but yeah, bro, I think that you have I think for animals, it's a little bit different because, but see, then it's another debate, wild animal versus captive bred domestic animal. Like,
right, because if they were in the wild, they would be the first heat cycle, maybe.
It's a whole.
If it could line up, it might not have, but if it, it's capable,
it's a whole different thing. Or maybe she bred every single season, or who knows? Like, we've never. I don't know. Maybe you remember back in the day when stray dogs were a problem. Like,
absolutely, man. You get a pack of dogs. I remember my great grandma's funeral. We were riding to the graveyard, and a pack of wild dogs ran across the road, downtown Richmond.
There's some here. There's some that live where I live in the mountains. There's a pack here. They come out every once in a while. But so you remember when stray dogs were a problem, right? And so they would do all these documentaries about the dogs. Like, I was just thinking about that now. It's like they weren't as in depth as probably a documentary about stray dogs might be today. But if you think about that, no one has ever really followed stray dogs around long enough to really know how and when and why they regulate themselves. We do know they do it from the short footage and interaction that we've seen, that they definitely form hierarchies and groups, just like wolves, because it's in their, it's in the genome, in the RNA, and it's not going to go anywhere. So I was thinking about that. Like, so what if the dogs were like, so how we're like, oh, you don't breed your female. Some people are like for 18 months, some people are 24 months, and depending on breed, some people are longer. What if the females are, they know, like, well, or the males, they don't even become, and it's just hypothetical. What if stray dogs, or even with wolves, because I'm not sure about this, so I don't want to say anything like in fact, but if these Canis, familiaris, lupus, or either one won't even approach a female that's not of a particular age, even if she is in heat. Now, this is hypothetical. I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Maybe.
Well, I have a female in heat right now. I was going to breed today, but she's a little early, so going to go for tomorrow. And man, she's making the decision of what male it is. I have the male that I'm going to breed her to,
right? But
she is making the decision to constantly try to go actually to her father. It constant is she's like putting it in his face, everything else, and I'm thinking, man, that's not who it's going to be with. It's going to be with this one over here. But
right. Well,
but she's
it's just what, and the reason I brought that up, and then you saying that it's interesting because there is a breed of dog that regulated. Well, I don't even know if the Cimarron is a breed yet. I'm not even sure. I think it does have a standard, but I don't think it's recognized.
I think it has a standard, I believe, but yeah.
But it's not recognized outside of Uruguay.
No.
Even though I know a few have left the country going into Asia. I've seen videos of them. But this dog pretty much regulated itself into what it is now, and then they tried to kill it, and then they're like, oh, you know what, we could probably use it, so let's keep them. So there's a dog that did it, but nobody was really there to see how it happened.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, by the time they started paying attention to the dog, it was already done. And now they were like competing directly with each other for food. The farmers and this dog. And so it's interesting, like, and that's a breed, man. I would love to learn more about the just the genetic makeup of that, man. You remember Molosser World? Back in the day. Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
See that site, man. I was
that
sick.
site was cool, wasn't it? It had all different types of molluskers on it and stuff. That was a cool site. That was my second favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, I was mad when it got shut down, man. And he tried to revive it. But man, I don't know, wherever he is, if he ever sees any of my shit, bro, you should do that shit again.
Please bring it back.
I mean, that site, I could, I was just like so ready to see how that site was going to evolve, and evolve what was already there, like, or especially like with what we have now. Like, could you imagine him like taking some of those breeds with the AI technology, and I'm not, I hate to say that, but I mean, it's here.
Yeah, it's here.
With some of the technology that we have, like making the pictures move and, bringing like, man, that would have been an awesome website to reconstruct with today's technology and watch and be able to click on some of those profiles and bring all that shit to life and have even more information. Like we've got guys on Instagram who've got pages who, they show all the old dogs and things like that. But I don't know, man. It's nothing like that website. It's not interactive. That site was interactive. You click on it, some stuff pops up. You click on it again. It was more information. Sometimes there were breeders there. Like, great. You click on this guy's Instagram and he's got, the Neapolitan Mastiff was such and such and such in 1844. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, bro. I already know that. Like, that's great. Some old pictures. I've already seen all those. All right.
Right.
But
we've seen them at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my favorite site from back then was a Rima Curto site. And we were talking earlier, it's what reminded me of it when you said Mollusker World. We were talking about kind of without the flash, and it was just meat and potatoes, right? And the old Curto site with the dogs, Nisa, Bandito, and just different dogs from back then. It was just the dog. They were out there at that red dirt up on top of the hilltop at the kennel, and just it was plain. It was just a cool sight, of what it was. I don't know if you remember it from back then.
I was gonna say, my experience and my knowledge of Curto back then, nobody was talking about Curto when I was looking for presses, except for Richard Kelly and Bill Fivefold. And the reason was because I guess at some point they were, I don't know if they were just visiting with him, but if you go back and you look at all the dogs that were imported in 92, 93, 94, the first one, none of them were Curto dogs.
No.
So, none of them, they all came from Ardeen, God, man, this is crazy. Any other time I can remember these kennel names, but I can't think of it. That's crazy. I can't think of it. If I smoke a blunt, I'll remember them all. I can't remember any of these kennel names back then. But I found out about Curto when I bought the videotape from Showstoppers.
Oh, I forgot about that. I forgot about they had that video. Yeah.
The very first yard, the first 30 minutes of the video was at Curto's yard. You know, it was at his spot, and
Uh-huh.
they were talking about the dogs, and then it went on after that, and it started showing all his dogs. It was like a 45-minute video, 45 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, I'm
And
pretty sure I've seen that part of it. Yeah.
so that was all that I knew about him until I got my first book. And then that's when I kind of was finding out that maybe I wasn't being told the real truth, is because what somebody told me to my face and then what the book said, you know, like contradicted each other.
Contradicted. Yeah.
But then they weren't telling the story right. Was like they were like, oh, all the presses went extinct. And so then they made the presser up again. And then the other story was, no, that's not what happened, is they had a few left over from the original crosses from the pre-1970. And so
I've heard both stories as well. That's how it was delivered to me, right. Both stories.
And so they used those dogs to seal up the cracks in the crosses. Because if you go back, even if you go back and you look at Curto's first crosses, them dogs don't look nothing like no damn presses of any time period. But they weren't. But they weren't.
But that's crazy too, because if you go into the pedigree, and if someone's been around the Curto style for a while, when he brought in Aruba, his entire line changed. I was probably around I'm probably gonna misspeak. It might be 06, 08 when Aruba.
You're what you're saying is right. The dates are pretty close. Someone else said the same thing. Another kennel guy that I used to talk to back in the day, and that just brings up the name Juan Carlos. And so Juan Carlos, there was a lot of trash talk about Juan Carlos and his dogs. And so they said that originally Curto and Juan Curto had the same dogs, not the same bloodline of dogs, but the same style, like these big dogs. And they said Curto's dog just all of a sudden just got smaller, like out of nowhere, from rather these 130, 140, 150 pound plus dogs. Then like enter Juan Carlos. I don't know why I kept saying Juan because I kept saying Curto. Carlos came from the mainland, and then he bought dogs from Tenerife and Gran Canaria, and then he started crossing them together, and then that's when they started shitting on him and saying that, because what we said earlier in the conversation is that those two islands didn't even agree on the Pressa and how it should be and what it should be. So for him to cross them together, and then within those two islands, those breeders didn't agree with each other because everybody had a different type of Pressa, but it was the Mahoero that was basically that primitive DNA in that dog that no matter what you bred it to, how you bred it, you got this certain look every single time. But the attitudes would be a little bit different.
Right. But, and then, neither here nor there, Juan Carlos was doing activities with his dogs that not everyone was doing.
Right.
And
that's why, he had, and so that's what, a lot of people wanted Juan Carlos dogs, because of that. Now you've got some people, Michael Morales says that Juan Carlos didn't own any presses. He never had any presses. They weren't real presses. He made his own presses. I'm like, but Juan Carlos.
I don't know. I could kind of see, I've seen video from Arnie at De La Arena where they went there to Atlas.
I was gonna say, he bought, but people have been to Atlas, but there was documented where he bought his dogs from.
Oh, okay.
At that time, all of those dogs were still fresh.
I would say all over the place.
They were all fresh. They were still, bro, they did not stop crossing. And I know this